Hello there, I'm Callum Johns and welcome to the EU in Review, where I review the Star Wars Expanded Universe as I experience it. Today I'm going to be talking about Queen of the Empire, written by Paul Davids and Hollace Davids. And it's also published in 1993, like the rest of the Jedi Prince series in my reviews so far. I'll begin with the blurb. A dangerous experiment, a shocking marriage, and the reappearance of an old enemy. The battle against the evil Empire rages on as heroic men, women, and aliens of the Rebel Alliance continue their struggle to end the era of darkness. But the ultimate defeat of the Imperial forces could come from within the Empire itself. The Imperial Grand Moffs are in revolt against the prophets of the dark side. As the Alliance struggles with its latest weapon, Project Decoy, Princess Leia is kidnapped by an old enemy, then menaced by the surprise appearance of another evil foe, one obsessed with turning Leia to the dark side and making her the Queen of the Empire. So I get straight into my notes that I took while I was reading this. So the first thing I thought was biorhythmic vibrations to check a person's identity is a really interesting feature. From memory, I haven't read much more about that in the past, but it's a little detail I could miss. So I'm going to keep an eye out for that in the future as well when it mentions that, because biorhythmic vibrations, they say, eyes can change, of course, because you lose an eye, you get a cybernetic replacement. Fingerprints can change, but the biorhythmic functions of your own body don't. That's really interesting. Anyway, the image of Chadrafan scientists in my mind was pretty funny, actually. You got these little bat creatures, if you don't know what the Chadrafan are, picture. But, yeah, you got these little bat creatures like in A New Hope. Those are so short, and then they're actually scientists. I think they'd be funny as a scientist. I think this is really interesting how Leia uses a human replica droid. Now I think this connects really well to Shadows of the Empire, because of Guri being a human replica droid. It actually makes sense that Leia would want to use a human replica droid in part of her own plan. At least as far as I think. And it's really cool. And Leia's experiences in Shadows of the Empire probably led to her decision to have a human replica droid in this series. Especially in this book. I believe this will be the first appearance of a human replica droid in novels. Going by release date, not chronological. So chronologically, I believe human replica droids, at least in the novels, Shadows of the Empire was first appearance, but by release date, 1993, Queen of the Empire. I find it interesting how they split Han and Chewie up in this story. It's like Chewie gets relegated and isn't really part of the story, where they focus a lot on Han and Leia. It's also interesting that Leia co-pilots the Millennium Falcon. I thought there isn't many times that she actually does this, so it's a nice way of saying that Han's starting to trust her more with everything. I thought it was funny that the Chadrafan homeworld is called Chad.
Was it the Chad?
And there's another thing, that there's a clear theme of talking about global warming in this. It seems that they actually injected a lot of current issues into these books, as children's books, to have them covered and say about global warming, in this case, to children. On page 12, Han actually says that he has little trust in the Force. And that's in the context of he has a little trust in the Force rather than not believing in it. So it's interesting to see how he's not as cynical about the Force as he used to be, especially starting in A New Hope. I thought Triclops having an alternate personality that comes out as he sleeps is a nifty idea. That's pretty cool. And on page 23, ha ha ha, I found a case of it contradicting itself. So they're on the planet Chad, which I mentioned, which is a Chadra-fan homeworld. And Luke says that, in context, he can read the thoughts and military secrets of everyone working here at Mount Yoda. But where they are at the moment is on Chad, not on Mount Yoda, which is in Dagobah. I'm onto you, book. So it's interesting. Also on page 23 and 24, it mentions Hologram Fun World, which, if you don't know, actually connects to Galaxy of Fear, the Nightmare Machine. And Lando checks out Hologram Fun World in that. I'll get to that later. On page 24, Han actually asks Leia to marry him in his own roundabout fashion, but he actually does it, which is awesome, and this is going to be a lead into what drives the plot for the next part. 3PO covering his eyes as they kiss is funny, so I think there's a picture, if it's page 24. Find it. Page 25. It has 3PO covering his eyes as they kiss, which is pretty funny. Zorba the Hutt appears again in this novel, and it makes good narrative sense. They actually introduce him in Zorba the Hutt's Revenge, but then it's not like he's been in one book and then he's forgotten about. There's actually a continuation of his story as well in this. Page 31. Oh yes, this is a juicy one. Leia makes a feminist statement. She says, husband and wife implies that the masculine gender belongs in the first position, whereas bride and groom... and then Han cuts it off. But it's funny how Leia is making a feminist statement just on saying husband and wife, rather than bride and groom. I think that's really... it's annoying that they put those sorts of things in here, but I think in a way it'll make sense, but I just don't like injecting those sorts of political ideas in the story unless it actually furthers the plot and isn't so blatant in some ways. Especially when it's Leia and not a different character as well, because I don't think it really fits Leia to make those sorts of comments. Anyway, there's a picture of Hologram Fun World on page 32 and 33. It sort of spans both pages, which is cool to see a visualization of Hologram Fun World, which is talked about in The Nightmare Machine. And page 34 makes a reference to THX 1138. And if you don't know, that's an old George Lucas movie, which was made before Star Wars, and there's references to it dotted out amongst a bunch of his stuff. They made little references to it here and there. It actually says they have... well, I don't know why they have the comma. If I can get that right. Right there. So it has 1138 or 1138 THX ultrasound speakers. Ultrasound speakers is interesting as well, thinking that they'd be ultrasound instead of other things. Oh, Lando actually is Baron Administrator of Hologram Fun World, which is very awesome how John Whitman, when he wrote Galaxy of Fear, connected one of his stories to the Jedi Prince series, and specifically Queen of the Empire, and I love it. Because he visited Hologram Fun World in Galaxy of Fear, the Nightmare Machine, and this is like a follow-up of him following on from his intention when he visited then, which is awesome. Oh, the thing is... stuttering, why did I do that? Anyway, Han and Leia couldn't get married in this book because of birth certificates. That's just weird to me. First, Han would never have had his ever in his life, basically, because he was orphaned and then picked up by Gareth Shrike. Why would he have a birth certificate? He had nothing. Secondly, he wouldn't care about papers anyway because of being a smuggler. But he accepts this without a complaint that they need a birth certificate. I think there was some potential for diplomatic layer coming in, and because Han wouldn't want to bother with all of the bureaucracy sort of stuff, and so he wouldn't want to worry about a birth certificate. He'd just want to say, get on with the marriage and let's do it. So for the purposes of the story, they wanted to put off the marriage because it doesn't fit within the narrative they want to tell. But I think a better way of doing it would have been to actually have him argue a little bit with Leia about it, but then Leia winning overall with that they should wait. Cossack the Hutt is mentioned in this book as well. He's also mentioned in a codex entry in Star Wars The Old Republic, the MMO, and is in connection to Zim the Despo. And apparently it was in Zorba the Hutt's Revenge, but I missed his name in that when I noted down stuff. Leia gives the fake name of Zelda, so that's quite possibly a reference to the Zelda games. And Trioculite, still in Carbonite, appears. So this actually got my mind racing. This is a cool plot twist, because Cardan and the Prophets of the Dark Side in the previous one destroyed what they thought was the Carbonite block with Trioculus in it. So it's really interesting. I was thinking about this. It got me thinking as I was reading it. It's a cool twist. Page 53. Lando says that he should have learned his lesson about gambling from earlier when he lost the Falcon to Han Solo. And this is a good way of addressing what people reading it might be thinking, I think. Because really, when you think about how he just bet his whole governorship of Cloud City on a Sabak game, what do you think? What were you thinking? Especially when you got caught by that before with Han. So I think it's a good way of addressing that. And here's where some of the weird terms in this series comes in. They have a mothference, so a conference, but of moths. So it's a mothference on a moth ship, which is a capital ship, but it's for moths, so it's a moth ship. Pretty funny. And Grand Moff Hissa returns. It seems like they couldn't kill him because it's a children's book and the way of being destroyed by the acid actually is too gruesome for someone to die in a kid's book. I don't know. No one's really died of a gruesome way specifically, unless it's someone that doesn't matter as much. Kadan did destroy a false carbonite block, which is a nice twist. So, how it works was, going back to Trioculus and Carbonite, Kadan actually got the Carbonite block from Zorba the Hutt's museum where it was set up. But of course, Zorba the Hutt put a false one up there. So it's interesting. The Sarlacc is still alive, and I think that definitely makes sense, as Boba left it alive after escaping the Sarlacc pit there. And the human replica droid has a homing mechanism so that it can find Leia anywhere. And I think that's clever, because it uses going back to that biorhythmic vibrations idea, where a droid can just detect where someone is when they've got programmed in them the person's specific biorhythmic vibrations. How far that'd actually be practical, who knows, but it's Star Wars and it's a cool idea. And I think how they trick Trioculus with the wedding is a cool idea. I'll leave that for you to read. I don't need to explain everything. And Grand Moff Hissa must be the captain of the Moff ship, because he's able to officiate a marriage, because Troclus is trying again to marry Princess Leia. And I'm just wondering, why would a dark book of Imperial Justice, as they call it, have wedding ceremonies in it? Wouldn't Imperial Justice be stuff to do with law and all that sort of stuff, and how they should run in certain conditions? And a wedding wouldn't be one of those. Although it does go into the wedding being part of basically he's going to be a tyrant and he's really evil, and the rules for the wedding that they had to agree with in the ceremony was that basically she's his slave. So, yeah. And it ends with the Sarlacc spitting out Zorba the Hutt, because Zorba was dropped into the Sarlacc pit. Read the story for context better. And then it ends on the Sarlacc spitting out Zorba because it couldn't digest a Hutt. That's just funny. But that could also be in relation to how it was damaged when Boba Fett escaped. So a little speculation there, but that's cool. Overall, I like these about in the same vein as all the others. Quirky, but fun. I'm enjoying them. Quirky ideas, and the storyline's a bit odd. It's like jumping over the place at the moment, where this one focused on Han and Leia more, but then randomly everyone's involved. It's like, okay, don't they have more important things to do there? I digress. I'm enjoying them, as they are. It's nice to see Han and Leia trying to elope, and also the connections that this has to the rest of the EU that people have made back to this Jedi Prince series. And I love it. So, what do you think of this book if you read it? Or, if you haven't read it, what do you think of some of the things I've talked about here? Let me know in the comments below. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.